Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today. This is our webinar on the home energy model. We will kick straight off because we've only got half an hour today, so we'll get straight into it and we can answer any questions that you've got at the end. First things first, a little bit of housekeeping. So we've turned off the cameras and the microphones, but if you've got any questions throughout the presentation, if you could please drop those into the chat bar and then we'll get to those at the end. The session itself is being recorded as well, and this is going to be shared onto our website at the end. So we won't be sharing slides, but you'll be able to catch up with it there afterwards if you need to. So this first episode is episode 1, webinar, the home energy model, what we know so far. And this is the first in a series of webinars that we're going to be presenting. So hopefully you find it useful. And if you do, then keep your eyes out for the next one, and we'll be sharing details after this one's finished. So my name's Pete Best, and I'm part of the client management team. I'm joined by my colleagues today. So I'm joined by Faye Worthy. She's also in the client management team, and Faye will be running through any questions that you've got at the end. And then also Jon Ponting, and Jon's an expert in the incoming home energy model regulations, and he'll be going through the detail of what that looks like shortly. So first of all, a little bit of an overview around AES, just in case you're unfamiliar with us and what we do. So we are a multi-award winning sustainability consultancy. We've been around for a long time now. So we were established back in 2005, so 20 years. And during that time, we've grown to over 130 expert consultants. We've got industry-leading sustainability expertise across the board for anything to do with sustainability and development. Along the way, we've worked with most of the top 25 house builders, and we've delivered thousands of projects across the UK, including developing national specifications for the top 10 PLC developers. And currently, we're working with the government on the future of SAP and Part L. In terms of the services we offer, I'll go through sort of a brief overview just to give you a flavour. We do lots of work around energy and sustainability strategies. Lots of overheating assessments and life cycle carbon and circular economy. We've got a team that are focused around BREEAM and Home Quality Mark, which is now rebranded as BREEAM New Construction, and actually got 2 BRE BREEAM awards to our name, and also delivered the first HQM scheme that occurred in the UK. Within AES, we've got deep London plan planning expertise. So if you're looking at London developments, we can certainly help you. And then also we do lots around Part L compliance and photographic evidence, passive house services, and much more too. So in short, if you've got a development project and you need assistance, then we can definitely help you. The final point from me is we also have a sister company, which is AES Compliance and Testing. And through compliance and testing, we provide air testing and sound testing all across the UK via a national network of engineers. With that, I'll hand over to you, Jon.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Pete. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. So yes, for those who aren't familiar with me, my name is Jon Ponting. I'm part of the strategic team here at AES. As Pete said, they're leading experts on the proposed home energy model. I have been working on various working groups, feeding information back into the government as they try to work out how best to approach this change in the building regulations and the launch of the home energy model, as well as working on these working groups. I've also been part of the alpha testing team for the government's HEM interface. But for those of you who don't know what HEM is, I'll explain that in a couple of slides' time. So what we're talking about today is the home energy model. And as Pete said, we are hoping to make this into a series of webinars to talk about things as they develop, and we are expecting more announcements and more news about these regulation changes to occur as these months go on. Fantastic case in point, we have had some breaking news come out just today about the home energy model, which I'll cover very shortly. So for those who aren't familiar, what is the home energy model? Basically, the home energy model was announced last year as part of the government's consultation into the Future Home Standard as a tool for replacing SAP. So we knew that Part L was going to change in, well, they say 2025, it's probably going to roll into 26. But as part of that change, we are going to be retiring SAP and moving over to this new methodology tool called the home energy model. Now, this will apply to residential developments built to the new Part L in England and to the new Section 6 in Scotland when the Scottish regulations change. It will, 99% certain it will happen in Wales as well when the Welsh regulations change, but we've not had any official confirmation yet from Wales. This third bullet point is the one that I was saying this is brand new. Government just announced today at midday that there is going to be a transitional period where a new version of SAP 10.3, and this new home energy model will both be approved routes to compliance. So I'll just park on that little bullet point there just to explain what that is, because as I say, this is stuff that has only been announced in the last couple of hours. We were expecting that when the new Part L changes next year, that SAP would end and the home energy model would take over. What's now been decided is that that's too much of a jolt in too much of a quick time. So instead of us jumping straight from SAP to the home energy model on day one of this regulation change, we're going to have an updated version of SAP because we know, we're familiar with SAP, we know how that works. So we will have this option where we can use this new version of SAP. It will still give similar results, so you'll still need to meet Future Home Standard, but you'll have this the familiar SAP methodology or this new exciting home energy model methodology, and we'll have that option to choose between the two until we get to a point where we're more settled as an industry with what the home energy model is trying to deliver, and then a date would be set in the sand to officially retire SAP. Now, as well as delivering compliance for building regulations, the home energy model will also be used to generate energy performance certificates, which are going to look very different to the energy performance certificates we know today. So on this picture here is an example from the Scottish government, because in Scotland they're running a separate but similar consultation to changing EPCs, and they've said they want EPCs to look like this. So instead of having a single B rating, C rating, which covers your entire dwelling, it's more of a dashboard effect. So in this example, you've got a rating for the fabric performance, you have a rating for the heating system efficiency, you have a rating for running costs. So you can pinpoint what you want to look at. And if you've got one poor rating and lots of good ratings, then you know that that poor rating is really what the house needs to be focused on if you were looking to renovate it. There are also plans for the existing domestic market. When you have a domestic energy assessor visit you to generate an EPC, they will also be adopting HEM in the reasonably near future, not as soon as what we're talking about today, but certainly over the coming years, we will see a decline in SAP assessments as all the different elements of the industry move over to this new home energy model. Now, in terms of timeframes, and this is probably the most frequently asked question we get, is when are all these changes going to be happening? And we have to keep saying we don't know officially. We keep hearing rumors on the grapevine. This slide I change every time I read it because I hear new gossip from certain places. This is where I stand today on this. Timeframes. I've said summer 2025. In the next couple of months, we're hoping that the government is going to confirm when all of these future announcements are going to happen. So we should hear about when the Future Home Standard is launched, when the new Part L will be released, and when the first version of the home energy model will be published for us to start assessing with. Later this year, probably autumn, but certainly before the end of the year, the UK government is expected to publish its Future Home Standard response, which will include the finalised text for the approved document Part L and also the accompanying documents such as the home energy model. Just by publishing it, it doesn't immediately become live. There will be a familiarisation period before we have to start applying it to new building sites, and we're hoping that that's going to be 12 months. So that would take us towards the end of late 2026 before any newly submitted building developments would need to comply with these new Future Home Standard requirements. Another one of the big questions we've been asked lately is why would we want to retire SAP? Because we've been using SAP for building regulation compliance for 20 years. Now, I've not been using SAP since day one, but I've been using SAP for about 18 years. I'm very familiar with it. I reminisce about the good old days when SAP was much easier to comply with than it is today. But it gets to a point with any calculation tool that you need to have a proper rewrite now and then. So whenever Part L is updated, and Part L gets updated every 4 to 5 years, we also update the SAP methodology to make it a bit more detailed, a bit more reflective of what's happening in the real world, and to bring that target emission rate down and down and down. So every time Part L is updated, it's more stringent in terms of carbon emissions. There is a fundamental problem is that we're just sticking plasters onto an existing interface, basically. And you can change SAP as much as you like, but the basic methodology, the foundation that SAP is built on, no longer meets our needs. I've got a few examples here to give you. SAP updates are slow. As I mentioned, it's updated every 5 years. So when there's new technology that comes along, SAP is very slow to be able to use it. Heat batteries are a fantastic point. You see a lot of, I've been going to different trade shows and exhibitions. I keep seeing heat batteries everywhere, but there's no heat battery button in SAP, whereas the home energy model will have a section where we can pick and select various heat batteries to apply to a house. SAP can't handle the daily fluctuations in things like heat pump efficiencies and PV generation, particularly if you've got a house with PV panels and with batteries and with a heat pump. It's changing all the time. So at some points, the house would be making electricity. At some points, it would be charging its battery. It could be discharging its battery, exporting energy to the grid, importing energy from the grid. All of this is happening hour by hour in our houses. But the way SAP calculates, SAP is just looking monthly. So it's saying, fine, in April, your house is going to use this much electricity. It's going to export this much electricity. And it's not taken into account these fluctuations that happen from day to night. So the home energy model will be able to do that, which will make its results far more accurate. Another thing that SAP can't consider is what's called load shifting appliances, which is, appreciate that's not really a mainstream term yet, although it is on its way. These are devices that we have in our homes, like washing machines, which can be effectively switched on by our energy supplier when electricity is at its cheapest or greenest, or when there's a surplus of electricity which needs to be used up. The electricity company can come along and basically switch your washing machine on. Again, that technology is way out of SAP's league, but it is something that the home energy model will be able to consider. So all of these things kind of all adding up to think, actually, why are we still using SAP? It's really quite basic. And if we want to head towards this net zero ambition for 2050, we need a calculation tool which is going to be far more flexible, far more dynamic, and deliver the results that we need. So what are the benefits of HEM? Number one, as I've mentioned, accuracy. It's going to be far more detailed. It should give us a far more accurate set of results compared to the current SAP calculation. It will be consistent as well. And this is quite an important change for us, the assessors, is that there will be one central home energy model engine, which is controlled by the government or an approved body, and all calculations will run through that single core engine. Just by having one engine means that we don't have to wait for software providers to update their software for if there are any updates or patches that are required. It just means it can be done far quicker, and one change will then be rolled out to all home energy models that are being completed. Flexibility is another advantage. So the HEM engine can be updated quicker, so it's easier to add new technology. Again, I mentioned heat batteries earlier on, but if another new technology comes along and they can very quickly write a bit of coding to sit into the home energy model, it can quickly be rolled out. Reporting is another benefit. So if we take a step back from just Part L and EPC compliance, the home energy model will be so much more detailed that we can ask it so many more questions and get so many other bits of information out, which SAP currently can't deliver for us. Moving on to my next point, which is research. So we can add different weather patterns into HEM. We can add different energy tariffs and pricing into HEM, and even different occupancy settings. So if we wanted to look at the performance of a house with 4 people instead of 1, or we wanted to see what the running cost would be for one energy company versus another energy company. Again, that's stuff HEM can do. It won't affect Part L or EPC, but it's something once you've got your HEM model, it's the question that we can ask the methodology tool. And also one model. So the idea behind HEM, or the long-term idea behind HEM, is that we will have this one all whizzy, all singing or dancing model for your house. Yes, phase 1 will be Part L and EPC, but there's no reason why that one model couldn't be used for other compliance checks in the future. There are disadvantages, so that level of detail that I keep talking about, that's going to increase the time it's going to take to make these HEM models. There will be different kind of tiers of the home energy model. So the Part L and EPC will be a more basic tier than what I would call the full fat, the all singing or dancing version of HEM. In terms of time frames, when we do a SAP now, we feed all the data in and we get an instant result. HEM doesn't currently do that. It takes it a few seconds to think about every change we make. So that is going to slow down getting results out, particularly on large sites where we have several hundred plots that we need to change. A disadvantage will be teething troubles. we are expecting performance of HEM to, it's brand new. They started with a blank piece of paper. They made all these fancy whizzy coding to get a fantastic methodology tool, but there could well be teething troubles. This breaking news, this transition of having SAP and HEM running side by side, that will help with teething troubles. So we can use SAP until the confidence is there to move over to HEM. Another disadvantage, you could be drowning in data. Now, if you ask us all kinds of questions about different heat loads and peaks and different weather files, there's going to be a lot more information. I'll put an example on here. The SAP worksheet, which shows the calculation of how SAP has arrived at the DER, for example. In HEM currently, it's a 17,500 row spreadsheet that it's running to get all of its iterations and get those results to you. So there's a lot of information going on in the background. I put worst case models as a disadvantage, particularly for developers who like to have a library of house types. You would want to know the worst orientation and the worst sheltering so that you can get that one to pass, then all the others will be fine. That's far more difficult with HEM because of the accuracy of HEM. We have to put in precise angles, we have to put in precise obstacles, so the surrounding houses and how far away they are and how tall they are. So it makes it very difficult to kind of define what a worst case house type would be in the home energy model. And the final point on there is training, because the SAP industry will need to upskill to learn HEM's new inputs and quirks. And again, by having this transition now with SAP running side by side with HEM, that should help. But again, that's still, we're still digesting that information ourselves. So we're not quite sure how it's all going to fit together. In terms of compliance, so how does Part L and HEM work with compliance? Basically the same as it is now. So there'll be a notional specification running in the background. We compare that against the dwelling's true specification, and we need to make sure that the actual specification of the house performs better than the notional. So HEM will calculate the notional and the proposed models and generate results just how SAP does today. So at the end of the day, you'll get a BREL report, you'll get an EPC. Yes, they might look a little bit different, but the outputs of HEM will eventually mimic what SAP is currently delivering today, albeit with a lot of different things going on in the background. The notional specification hasn't been confirmed yet, but we do have some clues about what compliance specifications we are expecting to see. And in later editions of this webinar, later on in the year, we will be able to confirm these as the government starts to release more information about it. So in terms of fabric, there shouldn't be anything significantly different to what we are working to currently under the current version of Part L. There may be a few improvements on walls and windows, but we're not expecting anything substantial to change. Heating is the big change. So gas boilers will not align with the Future Home Standard. Most dwellings will have to adopt heat pumps in order to comply. Solar panels is quite an interesting one, and this is something else which has been the discussion recently in various working groups. It's likely that PV will be mandatory. It will be required on all new buildings with suitable roof space. Even if you have an absolutely whizzy specification and don't necessarily need it to meet your target emission rate, you would still be expected to install PV panels or some on-site generation equipment to generate electricity. Air testing, we're not expecting any change from where we are now. It's currently 100% testing with a maximum target of 8, and we don't think that's going to change. Ventilation, again, that's not going to change, although the home energy model will give us far more scope for making things accurate in terms of ducting installation, ducting lengths. Exhaust air heat pumps, for example, don't perform well in SAP because there's a lot of defaults going on in the background when we're talking about the ventilation, the ducting. But home energy model should help us make things like that more accurate. And the final point on here, just about batteries. I did hear a rumor about if we're mandating PV, will we also mandate batteries in houses? That's not expected. We don't believe batteries would be mandatory, but obviously if you do install them, then there is a running cost benefit for the homeowner. Now, without finalized documentation, we don't want to make any assumptions. So you'll appreciate that what I've gone through there today is it's not really hearsay, but it's certainly nothing that's been officially announced, or the majority of it hasn't been officially announced. So until we know exactly what compliance looks like, and until we exactly know what that notional specification looks like, we don't want to be giving you false hopes. But what we can do, for example, I know a lot of developers are working on large sites which are currently in planning, which will have to meet these new regulations, even though we don't have a fixed date for the regulations. It's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years. So we can offer to support, such as the Future Homes Energy Strategy that we currently work on, which uses the current SAP methodology, but kind of makes a prediction of how we believe the home energy model and the Future Home Standard would work. So at least you have a a line in the sand. You have like a goalpost to aim for on these larger sites where you know the future home standard is coming up. But as I say, without the details, we can't give you that definitive answer just yet. So I appreciate that as an absolute whirlwind of information on what the home energy model is. I hope you've been able to take all that in. If you need to go back and have a listen back to it, it will be available on the AES website in the very near future. I have managed to keep to my time slot of 20 minutes, which is what we aimed for. So we've now got a few minutes to take on any questions if they have been appearing. So I'll hand over to Faye.
Thank you. That's great. So yeah, we had a couple of questions come in. So I'll start with, during the transition, when either SAP or HEM can be used, will both still generate the same outcome?
Right. So you'll have to appreciate that this was only announced by the government at midday today, and I've just had a frantic 2 hours trying to understand it and talking to various people in the industry to get some answers ourselves, because we just had received a one-line statement from the government saying this was going to happen. The intent is that these two calculation tools will deliver similar results, but I can't tell you that at this stage because it is hot off the press. If it was a physical press, it would be red hot. That's how recent it is. We've been told about this. All we know is that there will be this stage when Part L 2025 goes live. We will have two options for running SAP 10.3 or the home energy model. And at some point when the home energy model is more established, SAP 10.3 will be phased out. That's all I can tell you today. So you'll have to come back to our next episode. Hopefully we'll have more information.
Okay, and would the complexity of the model and the additional inputs required result in more time needed to obtain the results, thereby increasing costs? Or is there a simplified approach available?
Yeah, when it comes to the amount of time it's going to take to do HEM, again, this is an unknown. Certainly, we believe the home energy model will be more complex than SAP. And as I mentioned, there are certain tiers. So they're called, the official name is wrappers. So you've got the full fat HEM, which you can throw like a million different bits of information at, or you have the more simplified version, which will just deliver Part L and EPC compliance. We don't know how simplified that's going to be yet. So that means we can't define exactly how much longer it's going to take or anything like that. But as soon as we do know, then we'll be able to put some thoughts down and present it in the coming months.
Do you think 100mm external wall cavities will be feasible in HEM?
My gut instinct is to say no, but potentially yes. So you'd have to really push, I think. If you've got a house that's, because I know some developers have a 100mm cavity now, and we can get that to work with the current fabric energy efficiency targets. We are, as I mentioned, we're not expecting substantial changes to how the fabric performance works, but we are expecting some slight tweaks here and there. So it will be a bit more difficult to get your fabric to comply. I'd not want to commit to saying 100mm will work. I'd feel far more comfortable if everyone was using a 125 or a 150. But if I can prove myself wrong when I've got a HEM tool, then I will certainly come back and admit defeat and say, yes, you're right.
Okay, and do you expect simulation software such as AES or Design Builder will be required?
And other methodology tool interface suppliers are available. Yes, the way the home energy model is going to work, I briefly touched on it. There's going to be a central engine, and anybody with a bit of knowledge of coding or interface design can make a HEM interface pointed at this HEM engine, and you'll get the result out. So you don't have to write the entire methodology yourself. Now, how does that interface react with the engine? That's up to the people who are making the interface. So some people will have form filling, which is what we currently have with SAP. So you enter in your areas and your window sizes and your drop downs for your heating, and that will work absolutely fine. But also there's no reason why software providers who are already established with 3D design tools and maybe even things like Revit files, you could potentially take elements of those out and then throw them at the HEM engine, and you should get the same result either way you do it. So it really comes down to who's designing the HEM interface, because the actual background of it, the guts of it, the engine is going to be the same.
Is the intention to include TM59 or equivalent within HEM?
That has not been discussed at all. At this stage, there is nothing official has been announced to say that Part O is going to be changed, although I would be very surprised if that didn't happen in the coming years. I think I'm just speaking from what my own beliefs, my own opinion here is that government want to use the home energy model for starters with Part L. So they'll get Part L working, get EPC working, and then what else can this baby do? And I would really, I'd be surprised if Part O didn't feature that in a later phase.
Okay, and is the calculation of the EPC rating going to remain as running costs, not carbon emissions?
Right, now this is part of a separate consultation, which was running earlier this year. We don't quite know what the new EPCs are going to report on, but the expectation is that the main metric will be based on fabric, not running costs, although there will be multiple indexes or multiple rankings that you can look at. So there will still be one for running costs, or there should be. There should be one that's looking at energy use, or maybe one that's looking at emissions generated by the heating system. But it does seem to be that the wind is blowing in favour of looking at fabric performance, which would be more of a benefit for the existing housing market. Not such a big deal for new builds, where I would hope that all new builds would get an A rating, but we'll see.
Would the need for a coding interface in HEM bring potential new job roles or require consultants to learn some basic coding in the future?
It depends what you want to do with HEM. So from our side, I mean, we're exploring all kinds of options. Yes, primarily we're looking at HEM from Part L and EPC, but it raises a lot of questions about what else can you use this new interface tool for. And there are other companies I know who are kind of exploring, well, aside from Part L, if we've got all this information, what can we do with it? Generally speaking, if you're an assessor doing Part L compliance, then no, because you'll just be able to use the interface as it is, and you'll get your Part L results. If you want to start playing with things like peak loads or heating designs or all these other things that HEM could potentially open up for us, then maybe. But I think you'd have to be quite committed to the cause to be doing that yourself. There'll be other people who are doing the coding for. I'm hoping there'll be other people doing the coding for us. I can't code. My skills in Excel, as most most people who know me will know, because I mentioned it. I've been talking for less than half hour, and I've already brought up Excel. Absolute nightmare.
So as most house type designs are moving into Revit, will the outputs from Revit model assist the speed of HEM assessment instead of CAD?
There's potential in that, yes. So I mentioned about interface suppliers being able to build their own way of feeding into the HEM engine. So if there's a company out there who's very familiar with Revit files, they may be able to extract the information they want and feed it in. So it is a potential way forward. The thing about Revit files is there's a lot of information in them, and for me it'd just be a question of stripping it back just to dig out the information you'd need. Personally, I still prefer a nice big piece of A1 paper with a pen. But I know the youth like Revit files.
So should we have one more? Occupancy levels are often unknown during assessments. In such cases, I assume there is a standard default assumption used to account for this.
Yes.
If so, sorry, shall I?
No, you carry on.
If so, wouldn't this imply that EPC ratings could vary based on occupancy?
Yes, really good question. So as it currently stands, SAP calculates an occupancy based on the size of the building, and I'm sure. Well, actually, the discussion was that HEM will work out occupancy based on number of bedrooms in the property, and that will be set for Part L and probably for the EPC as well, because as you say, you don't know exactly how many people are going to be living in a dwelling. But if you want to do these extra curricular activities with HEM, you could then go into that section and say, oh, actually, this is my house. There's only 2 of us living in here, but HEM assumes there's 4 people because it's a 3-bed. And then you can get different results out. You wouldn't be able to use those results officially, so you couldn't relodge an EPC based on that, but maybe you can tweak with it and get some kind of provisional or adjacent EPC rating to say this is the actual official one, but this is actually closer to the mark for what I'm personally, how I personally live my life.
I think that's the end of the questions. So thanks everyone for joining. And yeah,
bang on
thanks
30 minutes. Thank you.
It was perfect timing.
I would say if anybody does have any other questions, obviously you can feed them through to us, and anything that we get that's kind of a frequent question, then we'll use that as content for our future episodes, because we, as Pete mentioned earlier on, this is the first of what we hope will be a series of mini short like information bursts. So really we appreciate any feedback on this, if it's been successful, if you've enjoyed it, if you've got other topics you want us to cover, yeah, send it over to us.
Thank you very much for joining, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks all.